We are back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us. We're on News Channel 5 on Facebook right now, newschannel5.com, also on the Plus. You see the number on the screen if you want to join in the conversation with District Attorney here in Davidson County, Glenn Funk. Thanks for coming on this morning.
Glad to be here.
Appreciate it. We've got a caller waited through the break. Let's go to Randy. Randy, good morning. Hi, Randy.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you this morning?
Good.
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Hey, I kind of like the idea that been floating around in my head and my wife's head. Could it be some of this is caused by us focusing on more sexual behaviors in schools instead of morale? I think morale has a lot to do with that they're not being taught at home, the things they should be taught. These kids, they go to babysitters, they go to school, back home, and nobody's there to guide them and give them the correct direction in their life. So I think that could be a lot of the problem there myself. And another thing, I don't have a problem with people owning guns. I don't personally own one, but I think everybody should have that right. But I also don't know why someone would need a magazine that would hold 50 to 100 rounds of bullets. That doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. Thank you for your call, Randy. I'll let you comment on both of those. I mean, the morals that our kids are taught, and by all accounts so far, this 18-year-old had a pretty lousy home life. I'm not making excuses for him. Just saying, look, his mom and dad and grandmother, we don't know. It didn't look good. And then what about the weapons?
Right. Well, let's talk about the weapons first. In the 1980s, after President Reagan was shot, Congress passed the Brady bill that limited automatic weapons, limited these magazines. Right? Why someone needs a magazine with 30 rounds or more, ability to have multiple clips, 30 rounds. When Travis Reinking went into that Waffle House, he fully intended to do a mass killing. He had a clip that he had loaded one by one 30 bullets into. He also had 2 more clips in the pockets of his jacket that each had 30 more bullets in it. If James Shaw Jr. had not disarmed him, then I'm 100% sure that every person in that Waffle House would have died. As tragic as it was, it would have turned into 25 or 30 people dead. And why in the world do we as citizens think that we need to have not just a gun to protect ourselves, but an assault rifle? I mean, just by its very name, it's an assault rifle. It's there to assault. I think if we were to go back to and reenact the Brady bill, that would help do some things, and that had broad bipartisan support, of course, in part because President Reagan had just been shot, and he luckily survived, and James Brady had just been ended up paralyzed because of somebody the shooting. So we had some common sense that we codified into federal law that we allowed to expire and was not reauthorized, and I think that'd be a great place to start, but I don't know that we're going to get there.
Yeah, and doing so and limiting those weapons, the difference is shootings would still occur, but I guess your point is if any of these shooters, Travis Reinking, for instance, goes into these establishments or schools with a handgun, there's still going to be probably people to die, which is horrible. But I mean, the potential for mass casualties is increased with these weapons. That's the point.
Well, not only is it the potential for mass casualties, it's also the thought of having this tremendous dark celebrity to taking this out, and then you're reading some of the law enforcement reports that there's folks that are in these chat rooms talking about, well, this person did this many, and then I got to top that, and kind of gassing each other up online. It's impossible to do that if you had a old 1770s muzzle loader, right, that you had to you wouldn't be able to do that, right? If you had just a regular handgun that didn't have a 30 bullets, right? You wouldn't be able to do that, and maybe the lure of the notoriety, the fame, the celebrity in those dark circles would not be as much. It would also be something where law enforcement, the school resource officers would be able to get to the scene on time, get to the location on time, get to the classroom on time to be able to save, almost all these lives.
They're already talking. I know one state lawmaker has already suggested, the idea of making sure, and funding is going to have to do this, putting SROs in every single school. Typically, SROs right now, school resource officers in Davidson County and elsewhere, usually in the high schools,
right?
Maybe a little middle schools, not as much elementary for good reason. You don't think they're there sometimes because of the students themselves who could cause problems.
Right.
Elementary schools. What are your thoughts on that? The idea of SROs, if the funding is there, as opposed to maybe some are suggesting, which I think is an awful idea, and I'm sure most teachers don't like this idea, of arming all teachers.
Right. We want our school environment to promote learning. We want our school environment to make sure that children feel safe, that they're able to learn the social skills that they need and the academic skills that they need. We want to instill a lifelong love of learning. Is that enhanced when a first grader has a school resource officer? Well, if that also promotes respect for law enforcement by having someone in the school, great. I mean, I was in first grade, me and my friends, we all wanted to be firemen or policemen. I mean, that's right, because that's who we respect. Who we grow up, that's who we still respect, right? Is those members of our community that are willing to do those jobs. On the other hand, if having someone there that's not just in uniform but actually had a gun on their hip, right? Well, wouldn't necessarily want that. You wouldn't want those kids. But it seems like if the way that we did it, either in the way that the school resource officer was in uniform, or where they're clothed, or what they had wear, that we did it in a way that promoted respect for the law and made it a safer place, then yeah, that might be something that we would look at. That there'd obviously be a fiscal cost to that, and I'm about public safety, and that's outside my lane as far as how to fund that. That's a mayor's office and a police chief issue, and I don't really get a vote in that, but I do lend a voice to it where I say, listen, anything we can do to protect our kids.
All right, as far as the mental health aspect of it, we touched on that a bit. We're touching on guns, the mental health. I know you've worked closely with the sheriff in terms of his new jail, trying to address mental health issues when you have inmates coming in. We know that's a big part of it. And I think that's part of this conversation here. I think every single one of these individuals involved in these mass shootings has something really, really wrong upstairs, and that there were indications of it before the shooting ever happened.
Right. I don't know of any one of these mass shooters anywhere in the country who had every person in their life say, well, gee, we just never saw that coming, right? Mental health is a big issue in America. But not every person with a mental health issue goes out and commits a mass shooting. I mean, that's still a tiny, tiny fraction. I think we're in a great place as a city. The city of Portland came to study what we are doing on mental health issues. Yes, they were here in April. Sheriff Hall does an amazing job with his behavioral care center. The fact that our mayor and our police chief, Chief Drake's amazing as far as trying to expand those services where mental health professionals can go out to calls with police officers. I know that as a city we are working in some large panels to try to work on a system where in some cases when the call comes in, the police don't even arrive at all. It's mental health professionals that respond to the call based on what the 911 operator is able to glean from the call. And so maybe that's having a separate phone number for just a mental health crisis, or whether it's having better screening, or having police officers make a quicker diagnosis on whether or not it's a call that they need to stay on, or whether it needs to be just a mental health professional. We've got Chief Drake is committed to having that program that started out just in 2 of the 8 precincts be citywide within the next 6 months to a year. We've seen great success in West Precinct on not only who's calling, but how those are not even making their way to the criminal justice system. So we've got fewer cases to deal with. And then if it's a little bit more serious, then it might be something where we're able to divert the case into the behavioral care center. And if it's a little bit more serious, it might go to Judge Melissa Blackburn and her mental health court, which is doing amazing work. And the BCC is seeing a 5% recidivism rate. Folks are a little bit more serious. The mental health court, they're a 15% recidivism rate. But for that population, those two are tremendous statistics. And then, if it gets a little bit more serious, then, where do we go from there? We've got a little bit of a gap in our menu of services. And then, obviously, if it turns into a Travis Ryan King type situation where someone with a mental health issue commits a mass murder, well, we have to go forward with making sure that the criminal justice system fully prosecutes that, and the only way to keep the community safe is through incapacitation, through incarceration. So, we are filling out this list of options that we have in a way that's really healthy for the city. And we've made tremendous progress because we've got new programs coming on. This time next year, if we have this same conversation, I'm sure we're going to have even more different programs that I can talk about and brag about, that the stakeholders, whether it's the sheriff, whether it's the police chief, whether it's the judges, whether it's the mayor's office, how the district attorney's office interfaces with all of those. I think we're going to be in an even better place by this time next year, but we're already doing things in such an amazing way that other cities around the country are taking note. And the fact that Portland, the DA heard about the behavioral care center when he was in Nashville last summer, and he brought his whole city leadership to come and study it. People know that we're doing a good job, and looking at Nashville as a leader in this area.
Take a break on that note. When we come back, we'll have more calls for you, more maybe comments I can address that I see on Facebook as well for District Attorney Glenn Funk right after this. Stay with us.
This is a Storm 5 weather update. For weather on the go, download